Welcome to Capital Grounds Podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Joe Fisher. I've got my colleague, Nick Miller, here with me. And today we're discussing some more real estate. We're discussing some criterias we look for in investment properties. And of course, as always, we're going to talk to you a little bit about coffee first because we enjoy coffee and we want to spread the love amongst some of the different places putting out some good brews. So, Nick, how you doing this morning?
Hey Joe, good morning. I'm doing well. I'm doing well. It's a beautiful spring day. It's a great day to be here. So I appreciate your time. How are you this morning?
Doing good, man. Enjoying the springtime down here in Texas. It's always a good time of year for us. Lots going on. We got some festivals happening, things like that. So, yeah, we're enjoying the time down here.
Man, that's great. That's great. What's in the cup this morning? What are you sipping on?
Oh, yeah. So I've got a good mug here.
That's a great mug. I recognize that.
Boulevard Brewing Company. So this is one of my favorite breweries out there, and a good Kansas City staple. Probably full disclosure, Nick, was the first beer I actually enjoyed was a Boulevard Wheat.
You and me
So
both.
have a little affinity towards that. But I also love this mug, just the way it's shaped and the quality of it. And then what I'm actually drinking today is called Cafe Bustillo. So it is a Brazilian coffee. Uh, it's ground really finely. I
It's
don't
an
think it's
espresso
going to be
ground,
able to
right?
show on the camera there, but ground really finely. So it's really dark. I enjoy that I just have to use a scoop and a half to get a really good cup of coffee out of it. And it was on sale, so that helps too. But it's a good coffee. It's something that is really easy for me. I don't have to grind this one up, although I do love getting beans and grinding those. But it's an easy cup to make in the morning.
Yeah, it's an easy go-to espresso blend too, Uh, Whenever we dig out the espresso maker. We typically like to use that, and it's great camping as well. At least I like
Oh
it in a
yeah,
little, yeah, mocha pot. That mug. I've got an identical mug. I don't know when you got yours.
might have been the same
Maybe,
time. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, at my bachelor party when we went through Boulevard.
Ah, yeah.
Yeah, that was a good time. That was a good time. It's like a classic, cafe diner style mug. It's thick walled.
Oh
I
yeah,
like it.
yeah.
It keeps coffee nice and toasty.
Yeah, I enjoy it a lot. I will say we were just so I do like this Cafe Bustillo, but like you said, you reminded me of the espressos. We were just in South Florida and went down to the Keys for a wedding we had to attend down there. Great time. But one of the things I love about going down there is the coffee, the Cuban coffee down there. And they do this thing with their espresso where they put in the espresso, but they also pack it with sugar and they
Ooh,
shoot all that through. It's good, man. I know some people like their coffee with
wow.
nothing in it, but
Yeah.
that's probably my favorite way to drink coffee is how the Cubans prepare it down there. So
So they pack sugar in with the grind,
yeah,
in with
in
the
with the grind.
grounds, and
Yeah,
wow.
exactly.
All right.
Exactly.
Okay.
So and then
Okay. That's interesting.
they got another one that I love called it's just they call it just cafe con leche, but it's with evaporated milk basically. And
Mm.
in that one, ooh man, I can do both of those all day. I see how people down there are always going because they're always hyped up on that sugar coffee.
Yeah, it sounds like it. Goodness, goodness. Well, looking forward to having a cup of coffee with you here in person here in a couple of weeks.
Yeah,
And
we'll be
yeah, I
in we'll
think it'll
be
be
in
a
New
good time.
York.
We
So
will.
we'll
We
get to drink
will.
some good coffee in New York, and we will be at a conference in Brooklyn, um, talking to some family offices and some other investors, as well as getting to, of course, connect with a few other people in the industry. So I think it's going to be a good opportunity for us. That's on May 11th, I believe, is the bulk of it, but getting in a few days before, have some meetings there in New York. So I think it's going to be a good opportunity for us to spread the wings a little bit up there. Haven't spent a ton of time in New York, so it'll be a good opportunity to meet some new folks.
Agreed. Agreed. I'm looking forward to it. And yeah, we'll see what the future holds. But today, let's talk about criteria for purchasing or building an investment property. And, obviously for those listening or watching, there are a number of things that we try to cover. Obviously, we're not going to hit all of them today.
Right.
And certainly some of the items we do hit, we could go, much, much deeper. But want to give a high level overview of some of the items that we look at.
Yeah, you're right, Nick. So I think the first thing, that we look at is we're going to look at building versus buying. So we're going to look at development, buying a piece of land, building apartments, townhomes, single family homes, whatever that area needs and whatever the fit is,
Sure.
versus going out and buying, an existing apartment complex that maybe could use some better management or a value add or something. So that's really the first thing we're going to look at. And I would say in general, for us, what works is we have a two-pronged strategy with this. We will typically build Class A higher end stuff because we can build it for cheaper than what we can buy it for. Just in general, not always, but just in general, we can build it for cheaper than what we can buy it for. And then Class C, B, we can usually buy that for cheaper than what we can build it for. So that's kind of how we approach it, just high level. Now there's some differences in those and some different nuances, and financing is going to be different on a build versus an existing that has revenue, right? So there's some things you got to look out for there, but generally that's how we look at it.
Sure, sure. And all of that is to say that the overall real estate market as a whole can also dictate what is more favorable, in most market scenarios, things are cyclical. So there's going to be a
Right.
period where, you know, perhaps it makes more sense to do one over the other. And all of that,
Sure.
there are a number of factors that can affect that. But on
I would
top of all of
say,
that, yeah, go for it.
I was just going to say to your point, I would say that one of the challenges with building now is that, banks, it's well documented, banks are tightening up quite a bit. And instead of before this year, you could maybe, or even we'll just say 2 years ago for sure, you could probably get an 80 LTV on a property that you were building and we're starting to lease up. Now the best we're going to get is 65 on the bridge loan, and that percentage is going to be high. So it's a challenge to try to work through the early stages of a build out, and we're going to be doing quite a bit of that here. We've got one actually that we're closing on the loan in June. That was a build out. And so we'll be going through it firsthand. So I can give you some more details as we go through that. We've got others in the pipeline that'll be similar, a similar story there. So I would say that's one thing that's changed quite a bit and does factor into our decision of buying versus building.
Certainly, certainly. And as the environment continues to change, we'll have to continue navigating as that evolves. But at the end of the day, it's just one piece of the puzzle, right? It's one piece of the puzzle.
Mhm.
And as we've talked about in our previous conversations, we're still working to make conservative estimates, conservative
Right.
projections, because certainly with construction loan, those are short-term debts. So the situation can change when you go to refinance it for the long term in either direction, right? And unfortunately, that can sometimes cause a lot of additional headaches if
Yes.
the
Yeah,
situation's less favorable than it was originally. But
it can. It can. Yeah. So
y-
I would say the second criterion, you guys are gonna hear this all the time, is just looking at location. Location's huge, right? Uh, it's probably drilled into everybody's heads when they're looking for a property, even if you're just looking to live someplace and buy a home to live in. Location is going to be the number one factor, and it's the number one driver. But for us, we're looking at location in multiple stages, right? So we're looking at location overall. So obviously US, and then from there Sun Belt, and then from there we're going to look at particular states that are more friendly. So Texas for us is where we started. It's in our opinion one of the best places to invest in the whole world, and we put a lot of resources into Texas. However, for example, we're not going to go and invest in California because the rules are much different there, a lot of regulations. Uh, there's just not value that we see in California. So for us, that's really important to kind of identify the overall market trends and where we want to go. And we believe the Sun Belt in general is where we're going to see the most population growth in the US over the next few decades, and where we really want to focus.
And, Joe, you make some great points. That's certainly not to say that there aren't valuable opportunities in a state like California, right? But from our perspective, why put our money in a state like California when we've got so many other opportunities staring us in the face right now that are much easier to contend with, like Arizona, Texas, some of these
Yep.
other popular Sun Belt states.
Well, and I will say this too. We listen to our investors, and
Sure,
all of our
absolutely.
investors that have come to us so far have said, I don't want anything in California. So if everybody who invests with us is saying we don't want anything there, we're going to avoid it, because we're going to listen to our investors and what they want, and that lines up with our investment philosophy anyways. So we're happy to accommodate.
And when we look at, some of the more specific areas in a state, so we've talked about the market overall, we've talked about,
Mhm.
the Sun Belt, and there's a lot of value in the Sun Belt as that region of the US continues to be popular. We're seeing people retire more, living in a warmer, drier climate is generally seems to be easier on people as they retire, as they get older. They don't have to worry about the harsh winters. And this is coming from a guy, who just moved from Minnesota.
Yeah.
So we saw a lot of snowbirds, certainly. But when we look at the specific states, you mentioned that we do obviously currently we're focused in Texas, and that's because the environment that the state of Texas has created is so conducive to the kind of investments and the kind of operations that we run currently. So exploring other states with similar mindsets and similar, lower barriers to entry uh,
Right.
is just as important as some of the other specifics, the neighborhoods, things of that nature.
Yeah. Well, and to your point, Nick, location goes beyond just the state, right? We focus on really the four major markets in Texas, which would be Houston, Austin, San Antonio, Dallas, Fort Worth. We focus on those four because between those four, there's over 20 million people that live in that's called the Triangle, is really what we call it. Well over 20 million people live in that. It might be closer to 30. I don't remember off the top of my head, but there's a lot of growth happening there, a lot of companies moving. Dallas in particular is a very diversified job market. Saw an article where, you know, they're looking at adding a big government hub for biotech, potentially a couple miles from me here in Dallas. There's a lot of positives from a job market perspective, and that's creating about $150,000, $150,000, 150,000 people per year are moving into the Dallas area. So it's creating a huge need for housing just in general.
Certainly. And it's likely, if Texas continues the direction they have been, I mean, we've talked about this in previous episodes, you're already in a deficit down there, right? There are not enough
Mhm.
homes being built, whether they're
Right.
apartments, single family homes, townhomes, what have you, not enough roofs to put over people's heads. And as these places continue to be popular and grow in popularity, I think that problem is only going to compound. So certainly continued opportunity there. And when we zoom in even deeper,
Hmm.
beyond the cities and recognize that the cities the philosophies of the state, like the state of Texas, can be really valuable. Having a city that will cooperate and are interested and is as invested in the success of a project as we are is also extremely valuable because at the end of the day, especially if we're building a property, being able to cooperate with the city and have their interest aligned with ours on a grander scale is extremely valuable. It makes the process much easier.
Yeah, it is. And one of the reasons we like Houston is Houston doesn't have any zoning laws. So from a developer's perspective, it's much easier to get through the red tape to make something happen there. So we have a lot of projects there. And I would say for Houston in particular, our strategy is a little different than it is for Dallas. So you talked about location, Nick, and even breaking it down a little bit further beyond beyond the markets of a Dallas or a Houston or an Austin. And for us in Houston, because we have a lot of properties there, we like to buy properties that are next to each other. Some people question this. It's not diversified, right? And they're right. When I first got into it, I thought the same thing. But the reality is we can be a lot more efficient if we own one apartment complex and we buy one, within a mile of that one. We can share resources between them. And for us, that strategy really works. And we're able to help the communities a lot more that we serve in Houston because of that. Now our strategy is different in Dallas, right? In Dallas, there's a lot of infill property, actually the most out of any city in the United States. And so we've looked at what's available within the urban core, and we've identified a couple of communities that are transitioning, and we believe we can create a lot of value there. One of the communities that we are heavily investing in doesn't have a grocery store. So on our list is how do we get a grocery store in there? It might be a joint venture with somebody else. It might be that we're able to do it ourselves, but we want to bring those types of things to the communities, and the communities we serve, we want them to be a vibrant place to live. So that factors into how we go about investing because we're really in this for the long term.
Absolutely. And I think that's a great segue to, if we can, zooming into
Hmm.
the exploration of these properties on a much deeper level and arguably even the deepest level is looking at the actual neighborhood.
Hmm.
What is it that is attractive about this neighborhood? What are the things that the tenants there see a need for? What do they wish they had already? I mean, last time I was in Texas, remember we were exploring that apartment complex and we talked with a gentleman who was sitting outside of his place and he mentioned how he felt uncomfortable because the security gates, this was a property we were looking to acquire. He
Hmm.
mentioned that the security gates were always broken. There were people that were
Sure.
flying through the parking lots at all hours of the night. And being able to really look at a neighborhood or a couple of neighborhoods and see what we can how we can add value, how we
Right.
can help to bring additional amenities or see what amenities are there already. Absolutely, that can be a major difference maker when we look at an individual property.
Yeah. Yeah. You're right, Nick. So that kind of segues us into really our third just high level segment is how do we look at how are we going to add value to a property, and that's a really good example actually. So a property that doesn't have working security gates or doesn't have a security guard there, whatever it may be, we want to look to fix that, and we want to look to make that a better community, just in general. And other things we want to do is we've gone to properties before and they haven't had Amazon won't come out there, for example. Could be because of security reasons, could be other reasons,
Sure.
or bus service. for the local school doesn't come to that apartment complex. So we've kind of made it a mission to fix those things and really get those amenities. And I know they seem really simple, but if you're living in those communities and you don't have it, it's very inconvenient. So we've made it a mission to get those amenities back into those communities. And so that's one way that we look at adding value when we buy a property, is doing things like that and just making it a better place. We want that guy's complaint to be something else in the future, not that the security gates don't work and that he doesn't feel safe, right? That's really the first thing you want to try to fix.
Agreed, agreed. And when you look at the why,
Mhm.
of what we do, it's to build wealth, certainly, and it's to be good advocates of our money and the money of our clients, but it's also to add value and improve the lives of those in our community and give something
Right.
back. And you're absolutely dead on. Some of these things seem simple and like no-brainers, but being able to purchase something and have it safely delivered, right? Being able to feel safe in your home at night, not have to worry about, can my kids play in the playground in the apartment complex and feel comfortable? Am I okay with them being over there?
Yeah.
Having security gates, I don't have to worry about my car being broken into. I mean, these are all what many of us might think are standards of living, right? But there are these places where they don't have that. Having access to a workout facility, a place to relax by a poolside. I mean, there are a number of things that we take for granted that some of these communities don't have access to.
Right. I would agree. And the other thing that we look at there from a numbers perspective, cost perspective, is we kind of touched on it earlier when we look at location, is how can we be more efficient, right? So when we buy a property, can we share resources between another property we have? We have our insurance in-house, so how much from a savings perspective are we going to receive by changing insurance? Things like that. There's a lot of things we can do that really don't change the property drastically, that make it a good investment. And so that's a big thing that we're going to look at, as how to add value. Now, of course, there's other things too, like fixing up the units that haven't been updated or whatever that may be, and increasing the rent slightly. But we're not really here to try to, increase the rent drastically and get people out. We want to do it mindfully and make sure that we're again creating a good community experience. But those numbers all factor in, and they all play a part in making sure that it's a good long-term investment.
Agreed, agreed. So many people look at these and think that the only way that we add value is we come in and maybe rehab a handful of units and then we raise the rents, right? But that's only one mechanism that we're able to add value. And
Hmm.
if you as an investor are only looking at the physical aspects of a property and only looking at the physical ways that you can improve or add value, I think you're missing a lot of additional opportunity there. At the end of the day, like so much of our life, what we do is based on how we feel, right? What's that classic saying? You may not remember what somebody said, but you'll remember how they made you feel. And that's what
Yeah.
we try to focus on. We want people that live in these properties to enjoy living there because that keeps our occupancy high, that keeps people
Hmm.
satisfied, keeps them coming back, and at the end of the day, is a better situation for everybody involved.
Look, the reality is it's a win-win, right? We win because we're making money as investors, and we're making money for our investors, but the community also benefits. And so that's how we really look at it. I mean, people have gotten really into ESG lately. I feel like we've been, our operator in particular has been ESG focused for 30 years. It's just he wasn't advertising that it was ESG, right? So I really think, there's multiple goals here, and it's kind of the classic thing. And when we look at the stock market and all of that, how much uh, from a company's perspective, how much of the overall pie, so as far as what you're investing, is going back to the shareholders, how much is going back to the community, those types of things, right? We want to make sure that we're very community focused, because we believe that if we do that, it's going to reward us later in the future, right? So that's our philosophy when we come to look at a property and adding value.
Yeah, we focus on trying to build a virtuous cycle, right? And
Right.
you reap what you sow. You reap what you sow. Not to quote The Office, but it becomes a win-win-win scenario. At the end of the day, we can feel good about how we're handling these situations and hopefully how we're improving the lives of those that we work with and the properties that we own, those that live there.
Yes. Yeah. Well, of course, we have a lot more we could dive into, and even from a numbers perspective, and maybe we'll do that at some point. We're going to try to get more education out there for you guys. But again, these conversations were really just meant to be more high level, just conversation with us, talking through a few things, and uh, we want to make sure that we don't get too far into the weeds. But if you do want to get into the weeds, you can call us, you can email us, you can check out the
Schedule a
website.
meeting. Yeah,
Yeah,
check
there's
out the
so many
website.
things you can do to learn, and we definitely encourage you to do any and all of those.
We've got articles that we post on a weekly basis. I
Mhm.
think right now we've got 2 articles we're posting every week. If there's a topic you'd like us to talk about on the show, if you'd like an article about something, send us a message, send us an email, or if you want to have a one-on-one conversation, like Joe mentioned, happy to have those. At the end of the day, we want to spread the wealth as much as we can. So we appreciate your time. If you haven't checked out our website, check it out, www.sitgcapital.com. Remember, the SITG stands for skin in the game. We believe in being advocates of our own money and the monies of our clients while taking care of the communities we love and live in.
Well put, Nick.
Well, Joe, I appreciate your time today. Any additional thoughts for our viewers?
No, just anybody who has listened, thank you. I know both of our wives have listened, and they have given us a lot of feedback on how to be better. So we will take it. If you got feedback for us, give it to us. We'll take it.
Yeah, absolutely. Comment, you get the classic YouTube, closing, comments, subscribe, click
Yeah,
on
all of
whatever the
that.
little notification is. Yeah. But we would love to hear from you. Get engaged. We're pretty fun guys, at least Joe is. So we'd love to hear from you.
Well, I don't know about that. My wife would probably say
Yeah,
something different.
you and me both, brother. Well, cool. Well, Joe, I appreciate the time this morning. Enjoy the cup of
Thanks, Nick.
coffee. We'll talk with you again next week.
Appreciate it.
All right, take care. Bye-bye.